Before we dive deep into scalability, leadership comments, and market implications, we need to understand one thing clearly. What exactly is Stellar's Protocol 23 upgrade, and why is everybody talking about it? Now, if you've been following Stellar for a while, you know the network has gone through a series of carefully timed upgrades, Protocol 19, Protocol 20, 21, 22, each one adding new functionality, improving security, or fine-tuning performance. But Protocol 23? This one feels different. This one is being called a foundational shift by developers, analysts, and yes, even the Stellar leadership itself. Let's rewind just a bit. Stellar launched back in 2014 with one bold mission: to make money move like email. Fast, cheap, global. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, Stellar wanted you to send value across borders with the same ease you send a text message. And to be fair, the network's track record has been impressive. Over 10 years of uptime, tens of millions of accounts created, millions of transactions processed daily, and integrations with everything from remittance companies to NGOs distributing aid. But here's the catch: as the crypto industry matured, expectations changed. By 2023 to 2024, it wasn't enough for a blockchain to just move tokens cheaply. The demand shifted toward programmability, scalability, and composability. Ethereum had its smart contracts. Solana had its blazing speed. Even Ripple was repositioning itself around institutional corridors. Stellar, despite its strong brand in payments, risked looking outdated if it didn't evolve. That's where the last few upgrades come in. Protocol 19 gave developers new flexibility in transaction authorization. Protocol 20 set the stage for Soroban, Stellar's smart contract platform. Protocol 21 and 22 worked on security hardening and ecosystem readiness. But Protocol 23? That's the upgrade that stitches it all together. So, what exactly is Protocol 23 bringing to the table in 2025? Let's break it down. Scalability enhancements. This is the headline feature. Protocol 23 introduces an upgraded consensus mechanism and optimizations that increase Stellar's throughput capacity significantly. Early developer reports suggest the network can now handle tens of thousands of transactions per second under stress conditions, something that puts it closer to Solana's ballpark, but without the trade-off of frequent network halts. Soroban integration at scale. Soroban, Stellar's smart contract layer, has been in testing for over a year. Protocol 23 fully integrates Soroban into mainnet at a scale-ready level. That means developers can now deploy advanced financial applications, from automated market makers, AMMs, to lending protocols, without worrying that they'll clog up the base layer. Lower latency finality. Another big one. Protocol 23 reduces average finality times to under 3 seconds. That's huge for payments. Think about it. When you send money across borders, every second counts. This upgrade pushes Stellar into the ultra-fast settlement category, a place very few blockchains can genuinely claim. Dynamic fee adjustments. Fees have always been Stellar's strength. Transactions often cost a fraction of a cent. But Protocol 23 introduces dynamic fee adjustment mechanisms, ensuring that even if usage spikes, fees remain predictable and fair. No Ethereum-style gas wars here. Enhanced developer tooling. For builders, Protocol 23 comes packed with improved SDKs, API endpoints, and debugging tools. The Stellar Development Foundation, SDF, has been rolling these out to make sure developers can actually leverage the scalability without pulling their hair out. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so Stellar's faster, cheaper, and more flexible now. But isn't that what every blockchain promises? Yes, fair point. But here's why Protocol 23 matters specifically in 2025. The stablecoin wars are heating up. We're in an era where stablecoins are at the center of digital finance. Tether, USDT, USDC, PYUSD. They're all jockeying for dominance. And the blockchains that can host these stablecoins efficiently are going to win big. With PayPal already moving PYUSD onto Stellar, Protocol 23 makes sure the network can handle the volume when millions of people actually start using it. The institutional pivot. Banks, fintechs, even governments are now exploring blockchain rails for payments and settlements. Institutions demand reliability at scale. Protocol 23 is Stellar's answer to that demand. It's no longer just about being fast and cheap. It's about being institution-ready. The developer economy. Ethereum may have the first-mover advantage in smart contracts, but let's be honest. Developers are tired of high fees and network congestion. Soroban on Protocol 23 gives Stellar a competitive alternative. And we know from history, once builders start migrating, ecosystems grow exponentially. Stellar's reputation. This is more subtle but equally important. For years, Stellar has been the quiet achiever. Always respected, rarely hyped. Protocol 23 changes the narrative. It puts Stellar back in the conversation, not just as the payments chain, but as a scalable, smart contract-enabled platform ready for prime time. And let me tell you, the buzz around this upgrade has been electric. Developer communities are hosting hackathons. Analysts are writing think pieces. Even rival chains are watching closely. It's not just another incremental update. People are calling Protocol 23 the Ethereum moment for Stellar, the upgrade that moves it from niche to mainstream relevance. And honestly, it couldn't have come at a better time. With the global financial system under pressure, inflation in some regions, stricter regulations in others, and a huge push toward digital-first money, the demand for scalable, efficient, and compliant blockchains has never been higher. Stellar is planting its flag right in the middle of that battlefield. Now, let me ask you this. If you were a fintech founder in 2025, building a payments app for global users, would you pick Ethereum with its higher fees, Solana with its speed but history of outages, or Stellar with its proven payment rails and this brand new scalability upgrade? That's the question Protocol 23 puts on the table. And more, the answer seems to be shifting towards Stellar. So, now that we've unpacked what Protocol 23 is, let's talk about why scalability is the word everyone's throwing around in 2025, and more importantly, how Stellar is actually addressing it. Because here's the reality. In crypto, scalability isn't just a buzzword. It's the difference between being a niche experiment and being real-world infrastructure. And when you look at Stellar's journey, scalability has always been both its strength and its looming challenge. Let's frame the problem clearly. Stellar has always been known for speed and low fees. If you've ever used the network, sending XLM or USDC costs a fraction of a cent and clears in seconds. For years, that's been Stellar's calling card. But here's the twist. When you start scaling from thousands of users to millions, and now potentially hundreds of millions thanks to PayPal and institutional adoption, the question becomes, can Stellar still keep those promises at scale? Think of it like this. It's one thing to serve a small town with smooth traffic. But what happens when you suddenly have to manage traffic for a whole country? The same road system doesn't cut it anymore. You need highways, overpasses, better signaling. That's what Protocol 23 is essentially building for Stellar, the blockchain equivalent of a modern highway system. To really appreciate the upgrade, you have to understand what the bottlenecks were. Throughput limits. Stellar could handle thousands of transactions per second in theory, but in practice, developers noticed performance dips when activity spiked. For example, during peak airdrop campaigns or when new stablecoin corridors launched, latency sometimes ticked upward. Not catastrophic, but noticeable. Limited smart contract bandwidth. Before Soroban integration, Stellar didn't even have traditional smart contracts. It relied on multi-signature accounts and pre-coded operations. That was fine for payments, but limited for DeFi or complex financial apps. Once Soroban testing began, the real question was, could Stellar handle thousands of contracts executing without clogging the base layer? Predictability concerns. One of Stellar's biggest strengths has been its rock-solid uptime. No major network halts, no mass failures. But as the ecosystem expanded, people asked, okay, but what happens when millions of PayPal users hit Stellar simultaneously? Will it still feel the same? Here's where Protocol 23 steps in with some powerful changes. Upgraded consensus flow. Stellar's Federated Byzantine Agreement (FBA) has always been its unique consensus model. Protocol 23 optimizes message propagation and validation, reducing bottlenecks in node communication. Translation. Faster, smoother consensus, even with more participants. Parallel execution for smart contracts. This is huge. Protocol 23 introduces parallelization for Soroban execution, meaning multiple contracts can run simultaneously without competing for the same resources. Think of it as moving from one cashier in a grocery store to 10 self-checkout lanes. Suddenly, wait times shrink dramatically. Adaptive transaction batching. Another neat feature. Stellar can now batch transactions more intelligently. Instead of processing them one by one in a rigid order, it can group them dynamically based on network load. This keeps throughput high even during spikes. Improved fee model. We talked about dynamic fees earlier, but here's why it matters for scalability. With Protocol 23, fees rise just enough during congestion to prevent spam, but not so high that everyday users are priced out. This balance is critical to keeping Stellar usable at scale. Now, let's put this into perspective. How does Stellar's approach to scalability stack up against the big names? Ethereum. Ethereum has been scaling through rollups, Arbitrum, Optimism, zk Sync. Great tech, but fragmented. Users constantly ask, which chain do I use? Stellar, with Protocol 23, is taking the opposite approach. Scale natively at the base layer. No rollup hopping, no fragmented liquidity. Solana. Solana is the obvious comparison point, blazing fast, high throughput. But let's be honest. Solana has had its share of network outages. Stellar, in contrast, has over a decade of uptime. Protocol 23 gives Stellar Solana-like speed without the same reliability concerns. Ripple XRP Ledger. Ripple focuses heavily on institutional corridors, but its programmability is limited. Stellar with Soroban plus scalability upgrades puts itself in a better position to serve not just banks, but also fintechs and DeFi apps. So when you look at the 2025 landscape, Stellar isn't just keeping up, it's carving its own lane. Fast, reliable, institution-ready, and still ridiculously cheap to use. Here's where it gets interesting. Since Protocol 23 went live on testnet and early mainnet, we've seen some real-world tests that show how scalable Stellar is becoming. PayPal's PYUSD stress test. Internal pilots processed hundreds of thousands of simulated remittance payments across corridors like USA, Mexico, and Europe, Africa. Result? Sub-3-second finality, stable fees, no congestion. Developer hackathons. Soroban hackathons have seen apps like Stellar native AMMs and NFT platforms stress the network. Feedback has been positive, no major bottlenecks even with high contract execution. NGO pilots. A major humanitarian NGO tested bulk payments to thousands of wallets in regions with poor banking infrastructure. Stellar handled the batch payouts seamlessly, something that's crucial when lives depend on aid reaching people fast. These aren't just hypotheticals, they're real signals that Protocol 23 isn't just theory. It's working. And here's where I want to slow down and talk about the human side. Because scalability isn't about flexing transaction per second numbers. It's about making sure real people can rely on the network when it matters. Imagine this. A small shop owner in Brazil using PayPal, but behind the scenes, their cross-border payments are now settling on Stellar rails. They don't care about Protocol 23, consensus mechanisms, or batching. They care that the payment clears instantly at low cost every single time. That's the true test of scalability, not just handling more traffic, but doing it so well that the user doesn't even notice. Protocol 23 is Stellar's attempt to hit that sweet spot. Invisible, reliable infrastructure that powers everyday life. So let me ask you this. If Stellar can now handle millions of daily users without breaking a sweat, what does that do to its reputation? Does it stay the quiet achiever in the background? Or does it suddenly move into the spotlight as the blockchain that just works, no drama attached? Because honestly, in an industry full of hype and meltdowns, reliability might be the killer feature nobody talks about enough. So, where does this leave us? Protocol 23 is more than just a technical milestone. It's Stellar's scalability answer to the 2025 crypto landscape. Faster throughput, thanks to optimized consensus and batching. Smarter execution with parallelized smart contracts. Predictable fees even during spikes. And proof from real-world pilots that it actually works under stress. When you stack that up against Ethereum's rollups, Solana's outages, and Ripple's limitations, you start to see why analysts are saying, Stellar may finally be ready to scale like never before. But here's the kicker. Technology is only half the story. The other half is what leaders are saying. Because in this space, perception drives adoption almost as much as performance. We've gone through the technical side of Protocol 23 and how Stellar is tackling scalability. Let's bring in the voices that matter, the leaders, the builders, the people shaping where Stellar is heading. Because no matter how solid the code is, perception and confidence often drive adoption just as much as performance. Take Danelle Dixon, CEO of the Stellar Development Foundation. In her 2025 update, she emphasized that Protocol 23 wasn't just about bigger numbers, but about real-world readiness. She said, "If scalability doesn't translate into resilience for end users, it's just a vanity metric." Protocol 23 ensures Stellar can handle PayPal-size adoption without losing its heartbeat. Then you've got Jed McCaleb, Stellar's co-founder, who has been a bit more quiet in recent years but still pops up to comment on direction. His perspective: the network was always designed for payments at scale. Protocol 23 is just catching the architecture up with the demand we knew would come. That's a powerful reminder. Stellar has been building with patience, not hype. And on the fintech side, even PayPal executives have acknowledged Stellar's growing role. During their Q2 2025 call, the CFO remarked that Stellar's upgrade gave them confidence in expanding PYUSD corridors without worrying about settlement delays. Translation: this isn't just a lab experiment. Big money trusts Stellar's rails. Now let's zoom out. What does scalability plus leadership support actually mean for adoption in 2025? First, it positions Stellar as a backbone for cross-border payments in ways we're already seeing play out. Remittance companies in Latin America and Africa are expanding pilots that rely on Stellar precisely because Protocol 23 removes their biggest fear: congestion. Second, it gives developers confidence to actually build on Soroban. Think about it, would you launch a lending protocol, a DEX, or a stablecoin project on a chain that might choke if you succeed? Probably not. But with Protocol 23's parallel execution and predictable fees, builders now see Stellar as a serious foundation. And third, it reframes Stellar's narrative in the broader crypto market. For years, it's been the quiet one. No flashy collapses, no celebrity endorsements, just steady delivery. With Protocol 23, the quiet achiever suddenly has a megaphone, because now it can claim scalability without chaos. So where does that leave us? Here's the takeaway. Scalability isn't just a technical checkbox. It's about trust, usability, and readiness for the moment when millions, maybe even billions, of people interact with Stellar without even knowing it. Protocol 23 doesn't just make Stellar faster. It makes it invisible infrastructure, humming quietly under the hood of global finance. And if you're listening right now, ask yourself, would you rather bet on the loudest blockchain, or the one that quietly keeps showing up, scaling up, and earning trust? Because if leaders, institutions, and developers are all converging on the same answer in 2025, then Stellar with Protocol 23 might just be the blockchain that finally bridges ambition and reality.